Our panel joins us again now for Rapid Fire. Some quick answers to some quick questions. And first off, the 2020 elections. Right now, we are less than 70 days away from the Iowa caucuses. February 3rd, 2020 is the one we're all counting down to. And in preparation for what will be a historic day, the Democratic candidates are still battling it out on the debate stage. Most recently last week in Atlanta, Georgia. Now this time around, I don't want to ask about the specific plans, the differences between Medicare for All and Medicare for All who want it, and the Affordable Care Act 2.0. Yes, absolutely, that's all very important. But let's discuss the current makeup of the field, the size, and if it's effective. Right now, we're entrenched in an impeachment inquiry. Yet, Iowa is just around the corner, and there are still 17 Democrats running for the nomination. My question is, do you think candidates who are polling 10 points behind the leaders, do you think they're serving an effective role in running? Or is it good that they're bringing in more perspectives, or are they taking away from the possibility of rallying behind a candidate? Meanwhile, all the candidates on the Democratic field, most of them have said that their main policy issue is to take President Trump out of office. Isn't it the best way and the smartest way and the most promising way to ensure he doesn't spend another term in the White House, voting him out? Andrew, what do you think?
So, I think the size of our field is generally a good thing. We've had more perspectives brought to the table, people of more backgrounds than in any Democratic or any presidential field in history. I think that's a fantastic thing. But I think we are approaching Iowa. I think that the candidates who are polling very low should have a gut check and realize, look, I'm not going to win this thing. It's time to step out. It's time to realize that my time of making my voice heard in a very important way has come to a conclusion. But I think that the fact that we have such a large field is not a liability in any way, shape, or form.
Keith, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, GW College Democrats is very encouraging of various perspectives. I love to see the diversity of our ideological spectrum, but at the end of the day, I do believe that we need to narrow this field down. People who are polling 1% of the stage are not going to win, but we should embrace a competitive competition of ideas. Barack Obama just said recently, people who are worried about a competitive primary should calm down because I myself had a competitive primary. I think that's what we need to be embracing right now.
Grace, what are you thinking here?
I think that the large Democratic field comes with its advantages and disadvantages. I like the advantages. It's causing all of the candidates to really check themselves and check out what they're doing, really, come and attack each other, and in a good way to really focus on their policy. Really focus on policy. And a disadvantage, it doesn't help the Republicans because we're still trying to figure out who we need to beat in 2020. The big field, people need to start dropping out, and the Democrats need to find their front runner, and they need to start backing that front runner. So it'll make the Republicans' lives a little easier when we're trying to figure out what we're going to do for 2020.
Josh, what's your thought on the opposing field?
Well, it's really interesting because we had a really large field in 2016. But with this one, not only do you have upwards of 16, 17 people still in the race after we've already had a few dropouts, you have more people entering now, Deval Patrick and Michael Bloomberg. The field's still growing.
It won't stop.
And we're almost 2 months away from the Iowa caucuses, so it's pretty extraordinary. Look, if I was one of the lower candidates at this point, if I've appeared in a debate, I've made my case for a cabinet position. If I'm someone who's trying to fill up the moderate lane, I'm worried that I'm detracting from Joe Biden's potential win nomination. If I'm someone who wants the party to move left, I'd be worried that I'm preventing Elizabeth Warren from becoming the frontrunner. So if I was someone lower down, I would look at the vision for the party moving forward rather than my own personal candidacy.
Interesting. I don't even know if the party right now has a vision. It seems like there are so many conflicting viewpoints, but another conversation for another time. Moving on now, on November 16th, Roger Stone, Republican strategist and longtime ally of President Trump, was found guilty on 5 counts of lying to investigators, 1 count of obstructing a congressional probe, that probe being an investigation looking into Russia's interference in the 2016 election, and 1 count of witness tampering. All of these verdicts were unanimous, and they were determined in a trial that lasted just over a week. Now, my question is, what does this mean for the president? Will President Trump be forced to pardon Stone? What about the fact that House investigators are now looking into President Trump's written responses in the Mueller investigation? And stepping away from those specifics, Stone was a confidant of President Trump. Stone is now guilty. What effect, what reflection will this have on President Trump? Josh, you first.
Well, the president's not forced to pardon anyone, and I don't think he should pardon Mr. Stone. I think, unfortunately, we've seen through decades, the entire history of our country, both sides of the aisle, unfortunately, you have people who work their way into power who don't always have the best intentions. I think it's clear that Roger Stone has shown a long historic record of not telling the truth, and it finally caught up to him. And in my opinion, in terms of his involvement in the party, just good riddance.
Grace?
I believe what Roger Stone did was wrong, and I don't believe that it's President Trump's job to pardon him. I mean, as what Josh was saying, Roger Stone has had a very long history of lying and being manipulative within the party and to different candidates, and he got what was coming for him for a really long time. So,
Keith?
Like Josh said, the former chairman of GW College Republicans is a especially infamous and polarizing figure. I think that the truth finally caught up to him. And I
He
think
was the chairman of College Republicans?
he was. John Olds told me that, actually.
I'm not even going to ask you guys for a response.
Cannot confirm nor deny.
Yeah.
That's what Roger said.
Fact check team, take a look at that one.
But I think
Go
this does
on.
follow a trend of Trump's inner circle being found guilty of these high crimes. Paul Manafort is in prison right now. I think it's eventually going to catch up to the president as well.
Andrew, last thought.
So, like, look, you could fill a school bus with all of the Trump aides who have pled guilty or have been found guilty in proceedings that have been related to Trump's campaign. You've got not only Roger Stone, but you've got Rick Gates, you've got Paul Manafort, you've got Michael Flynn, George Papadopoulos. At a certain point, when looking at the fact that Donald Trump was surrounded by these people who have engaged in criminal conduct, the reflection, to get back to your question, it reflects very poorly upon President Trump. And I think the House is absolutely right to be looking into that, because when there's that much smoke, there's probably fire.
All right, moving on now to our last topic, where in Hong Kong, protests have erupted in the streets after individuals have been protesting for their independence from the home country, China. Speaker Pelosi signed a bill expressing support for the Hong Kong protesters, sending that legislation to President Trump's desk for a final signature. But the monkey wrench in this entire saga, the president's relationship with China and President Xi. President Trump is in negotiations with China for a trade deal, so questions are looming regarding whether or not he will sign the bill. What effect do you think, if any, President Trump's current negotiations with China will have on his possibility of signing this bill and the protests in Hong Kong? Keith, we'll go to you first.
Right, so DC College Democrats has been working in conjunction with Catholic University of America to ensure that we do demonstrate our support for the people of Hong Kong. The fight that they are wagering is one that needs to be fought. I don't exactly know all the implications of how this is going to affect trade negotiations. I think that this trade war that he's got us into is disastrous to begin with. I think that at the end of the day, he needs to recognize that people in my home state of Kansas are suffering. These are the people who elected him to the Oval Office.
Allow me to rephrase quickly. The protests in Hong Kong are over the democracy for Hong Kong to take themselves, to grant their independence for China. The United States is a beacon of democracy. We're the world leaders when it comes to democracy. President Trump is possibly going to hold up his support for another democratic country to take form because of this looming trade deal. So the crux of the question I want to get to is it more important for President Trump to keep his trade negotiations in mind or to keep another democratic nation developing in mind?
Oh, let's be very clear. The development of democracy abroad is far more important. The development of human rights abroad is far more important than any sort of economic trade deal. Even though that trade deal is going to impact the economy of the United States and the global economy. But those two things go hand in hand.
Andrew, care to add?
Look, Xi Jinping is not a good actor here. Xi Jinping is not on the side of democracy. Xi Jinping is not on the side of Donald Trump, as much as Donald Trump would like to himself believe that and have the American people believe that. What we are seeing is the brutal suppression of a democratic movement. These people protesting are people our age, mostly college students, and they're being met with rubber bullets and tear gas, and there's honest-to-God fears of another Tiananmen Square happening in Hong Kong as these protests continue to be suppressed. It is absolutely incumbent upon the United States as the leader of the free world, as a beacon for liberty and democracy throughout the world, to support these people, to support their fight for democracy, and to oppose China's efforts to impose authoritarianism in Hong Kong and around the world.
Grace, your thoughts here?
I believe that we should be promoting democracy over in Hong Kong, but I also believe that we need to keep our trade relations with China on good terms. So it's going to be a really difficult balance for President Trump to find when we're trying to figure out this Hong Kong situation. I mean, it's the bill that was passed, I believe it came with bipartisan support, and I know that, you know, it's one of our American values is to promote democracy, so I really do believe that that's a really important factor in this, and I believe that everything that's happened to those college students over in China is incredibly terrible, and I never wish to see that ever happen to any type of student.
Josh, last word in the conversation.
Well, you definitely can't view geopolitical issues in isolation, so you do have to factor in trade negotiations as well as national security concerns in any of these assessments. These are complicated issues. But just to add on, I know that we have college students, people our age there, and quite frankly, it's inspirational to see them. They wave the American flag because of what our nation and our movement has symbolized. I think it's important that we always symbolize freedom and liberty around the globe.
Absolutely. All right. We'll have to end things there. Andrew Segru, Keith Nagy, Grace Middenswide, Josh Kuttner, thank you guys so much for joining us. Really fun conversation. When we come back, Willow Hassan has our debate fact check. Stay with us.